Steve Bannon needs no introduction. Navy man, student of history, controversialist, and it's almost a year to the day since we first met. When I turned up in Washington at the White House, nobody knew who I was because there was no reference to me in the system, and I literally just walked away and went to a restaurant for an hour, and then 4 hours later, interviewing the president, seen the vice president, and then we met in your war room. I mean, you're still in touch with the president. Is it still as chaotic as that?
That was ordered chaos. We wanted to see how much you really wanted. No, I think it's one of the best interviews the president had. The Financial Times interview was fantastic. But you got a full day.
You know, flattery is going to get you nowhere.
I know that. I've dealt with you before. No, I think Reince had a different, the president, and I think the president a little bit's going back to that methodology.
Trump Tower.
Yeah, I think very
much.
No
process.
Well, it's not no process. He manages in a different way. He processes information in a different way. And I think you saw at that time, Reince's style was a little more like President Trump was used to in Trump Tower. General Kelly came in, it was completely different, very ordered, very structured. I think we've seen a reaction to that. And I believe that you're going to see the president much more directly in contact with staff people. I've actually argued that if General Kelly at any time does decide to leave, or the president decides it's time for him to move on, I don't believe there'll be another chief of staff. I think that there'll be 5 or 6 direct reports like there was in Trump Tower. I think the president is a very hands-on manager, and he feels more comfortable with that. I think the structure and process that General Kelly put in was probably too much. And so I think you saw that day kind of a middle ground. But by the way, you saw the vice president, the chief of staff, you interviewed the president of the United States in the Oval, and you got to see the war room with all the to-do list.
I did. Do you miss the proximity to power?
No, I didn't enjoy it every day. I'm not a staffer, so it's no.
Just going back to the president for a moment, I mean, do you think the scariest thing is that he actually now thinks he's really good at this?
Well, I think he is really good at this. I think he's done a fantastic job, and I think he's got natural instincts. I know it still triggers the left, the Democratic Party, and the opposition party media. Still triggers people that he won. He's president of the United States, but he is president of the United States. He won a resounding victory. He won it the old-fashioned way by getting out on the hustings and convincing the people. He's the greatest orator I think we've had since William Jennings Bryan, and I think it was his speeches that galvanized people, and so I think he won it. And I think the other day, you saw Hillary Clinton still doesn't get it, where she sits there and trashes the deplorables again.
Yeah, let's leave Mrs. Clinton out of it for the moment. Now, just to be clear, I should have said this at the outset because your conversation with me has aroused some controversy. Mr. Bannon is not being paid for this interview. There is no deal, no under the table, nothing.
I didn't even get a discount on my FT subscription.
It's a premium product. Can we just get that right? Now, you've just come back from Europe, and I've been doing a little bit of research. And I don't just mean by reading page by page Fire and Fury. By the way, do you regret being the primary source for that book?
No, if you look at Jennifer Jacobs in Bloomberg did a very detailed analysis. That book was authorized. I mean, her article in Bloomberg showed that Hope Hicks and the president authorized the book on the 100th day anniversary. C-SPAN had an entire day of the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. Wolf was on the sofa with Kellyanne Conway. I think he actually referred to her as his Sherpa, right? They had access to 15 staffers. I haven't seen anybody refute anything that was said in the book.
Right.
I haven't read the book, but no, I don't regret it. It is what it is.
Let's get back to that European tour that you've just been doing. There's an interview which you gave to Nicholas Farrell in the Spectator magazine, in which you say that you are, quotes, fascinated by Mussolini. You refer to his virility. Also, his amazing fashion sense. Are you just trying to wind us up, or do you actually really believe that Mussolini, who was an anti-Semite, who brought chaos in his country, disastrous invasions. I mean, what
Did I
is
say he was a good guy in there? Did I say he was a positive individual?
You say
I said
he
he's
was a guy's guy. That means really good guy.
No. I said he's a fascinating historical figure. I think it's one of the problems with political correctness. If you can't study these historical figures and see why they motivated people in time, and how they spoke to people and how they motivated people, you're never going to be able to understand that and to avoid it in the future. I think he's a fascinating historical figure.
Right.
And one of the reasons I said that is the guy that did the interview wrote, I thought, one of the best biographies of Mussolini besides Dennis Mack Smith's?
Dennis Mack Smith, yeah.
Dennis Mack Smith wrote the other definitive biography.
He did.
This guy, Lawler, I think wrote the counter biography to that. I think he's a fascinating figure, and I thought he did a great job of writing the book.
And of course,
But by the way, this is one of the problems we have today. If you say something like that in a 2-hour interview, it's brought up and everybody melts down.
Because you are a student of history, and therefore you would be familiar with the private correspondence between Mussolini and his longtime lover. By the way, he had 5 children by his long-suffering wife and 9 children by his 8 other lovers. Now,
I did throw virility in there, didn't I? Did I miss that?
In the private correspondence between Mussolini and his lover, he described Jews as pigs, a people destined to be wiped out.
Is the point here to say Mussolini's not a good guy? Mussolini's not. By the way, he's a very evil guy. Right. Doesn't mean he's not fascinating. Yeah. But this is the problem we have. If you say the guy's fascinating and he's worthy of study because he is worthy of study, particularly in today's environment, right? All of a sudden, he's anti-Semitic. Yes, he was anti-Semitic. He was a terrible guy, and he led his country to the verge of destruction. If it wasn't for the deplorables, kids from Kansas and Wisconsin, et cetera, that went over and freed the Italian people. Yeah. So I didn't say he was a good guy. I said he was a fascinating guy. And even though he said all that stuff, he's still fascinating.
Right. Let's move on to the important speech that you gave in Zurich, which talked about the new serfdom. And you say here that the biggest danger we have is state capitalism. These companies, technology companies, that debase your currency, debase your citizenship, and take your personhood digitally. What did you mean by that? And especially bearing in mind the fact that you've done rather well out of digital technology.
I think this is very important. I think the 3 converging forces, and we'll get into Cambridge Analytica, I'm sure, in a second.
We will.
I'm sure we will. What I said in Zurich and what I said to the Front National people, the center of my discussion. The reason I went to Zurich is the center, or the Silicon Valley of cryptocurrency. You have 3 converging forces right now, I believe, in the world. Number 1 is this center-right populist nationalist movement that is politically driven, and is driven a lot by social media. On the second, you have this cryptocurrency or blockchain. In the third, you have this concept of digital sovereignty, okay? The taking of your intellectual property assets. And they're all converging, I think, to empower this movement. Central governments debase your citizenship. Central banks debase your currency. And the central technocratic state capitalism we have with Google and Facebook take your personhood and basically take away your intellectual property, your digital sovereignty. And by the way, I'm glad this amazing paper, the Financial Times today,
He did not get paid for that advertisement.
Which the Financial Times never agreed with anything. Today, its lead editorial, digital privacy rights require data ownership. Now, they didn't give me a shout out for Zurich and but they agree. The future, by the way, right now you're serfs, okay? You're well-paid serfs, but you're serfs. They've debased your currency, and so and they underwrite debt, right, for sovereign governments at 0 interest rates. So you're always on the spinning wheel like a little hamster, trying to get ahead because they've destroyed the ability of thrift, of you to save to get ahead. The same thing on on your digital assets, your intellectual property. They take it all for free. So when Zuckerberg goes on TV yesterday, or Zuckerberg gives the New York Times an interview, and the opposition party media plays patty cake with him and doesn't ask him one tough question, okay? His entire business model is made upon taking that data for free and monetizing it, and then writing algorithms behind a wall that treat you like hamsters on a wheel.
Right.
That's their business model.
I'm so glad you raised Facebook, because as you know, you were an investor in Cambridge Analytica.
I helped put the company together.
And
yeah.
yes, you did. And
gave it that amazing name.
Yeah, what a
Stroke of genius.
Stroke of genius.
Yeah, because
So
the whole
it
Cambridge
doesn't.
stuff.
It's just branding it. I mean, it's actually an empty shell.
Just branding.
What was the guy like, Alexander Nix?
I'd rather not comment on Alexander
Etonian.
Nix. Old Etonian. Shows you about the education system among the elites in England. But by the way, let's talk about let's talk about Cambridge Analytica for a second. The data. The data is just a cost. The data from Facebook is just about the cost of it. That data is out there. There's a marketplace for your data. It's bought and sold every day.
Yeah, but the people didn't know it was being leaked.
That's the difference. That's the issue between Cambridge, the professor, and Facebook. And by the way, there's an open.
Were you aware of that? Were you aware of that leak? You didn't.
I didn't even know about the Facebook mining. But hang on. The point is that is Facebook's business. In 2008, it was Google and Facebook that went to Barack Obama and met him in San Francisco airport and told him all about the power of this personal data. In 2012, and we have the woman who headed up data integrity said, "Hey, Facebook gave us the information because they were quote unquote on our side." So the great opposition party, media, never went after the Obama campaign, never went after the progressive leftists, have been doing this for years. And in 2013, when I thought that a data company might be important, all of a sudden becomes global news. Yeah. And by the way, the information out there, the information for the Facebook thing, it's just about the cost of it. Did the guy pay $1 or you got to pay $2 or $3 for it? It's just a cost thing. That data is all out there. And that's how Facebook, that's how they take your stuff for free. They sell it and monetize it for huge margins. That's why the companies trade for such high valuations. Then they write algorithms and control your life. And yet when Zuckerberg comes, he sounds like a first-year associate hired in corporate development, mumbles through the whole interview, and nobody asks him a tough follow-on question.
Right. Let's just go back to that wonderfully named Cambridge Analytica.
Yep.
You will be
You're like a dog with a bone on this, aren't you?
It's a tasty bone, though. There's a lot of juice.
There's still a lot of meat left on that bone.
Yeah. So let's just pick it apart here, because Mr. Nix, he didn't just boast about the data he had. He boasted about the dirty tricks.
That's all. Okay, that's another company. That's SEL. That's his company, run by Brits, old Etonians.
With Robert Mercer's investment?
Absolutely not. There's not a penny of Robert Mercer's money. SEL, no way. SEL is a separate company. It's their company that does stuff throughout the world. So you're saying all staffed by British guys from Cambridge and Oxford.
Not all Etonians, though.
Not all old Etonians. But whatever they do in the world is not it. All Cambridge Analytica is the data scientist and the applied applications here in the United States. It has nothing to do with the international stuff. The Guardian actually tells you that, and the Observer tell you that when you get down to the 10th paragraph, okay? When you get down to the 10th paragraph, and what Nix does overseas is what Nix does overseas, right? It was a data company. And by the way, Cruz's campaign and the Trump campaign say, hey, they were a pretty good data company, but this whole thing on psychographics was optionality in the deal. If it ever worked, it worked. But it hasn't worked, and it doesn't look like it's going to work. So it was never even applied. Here's the point. The progressive left and the opposition party cannot get over one basic fact. Donald J. Trump is president of the United States, and he beat Hillary Clinton. He beat her badly. First, you had to run to Russia, okay? Now, Russia didn't work out. How do we know Russia didn't work out? Because the House report shows you there's nothing on collusion. And Mueller's investigation shows you he's looking at either Trump Organization financials, or he's looking at, hang on. He's looking at obstruction of justice. My point is, you struck out on Russia, and now you've got to go to Cambridge Analytica. That's what won it for you. Here's what won it for you. Here's what won it for Trump. Economic nationalism and talking in a plain voice to the American people.
Okay. I think I've heard that record before, but
that happens to be the facts.
Just let's have a quick answer here. Do you believe that Donald Trump should shake up and sack his legal team?
I've said that from day one. I've been public.
So what's the significance of John Dowd's?
Well, he got fired. I mean, they brought in de Geneva to be much more aggressive, and I think I think it's pretty obvious that that Ty Cobb and John Dowd did a very okay. Let's just step back. Why did I get lit up on Capitol Hill by the House Intel Committee? Because the White House, Don McGahn, exerted executive privilege over any questions about the transition or the White House. I answered every question on the campaign about Russian collusion. Okay? Schiff and these guys' heads are blowing up. Today, he's going to subpoena me again because of the transition in the White House, because Don McGahn exerted executive privilege. Ty Cobb and John Dowd had a radical theory. Let's totally cooperate and waive executive privilege. Okay? I have said, as I told the president and told everybody, and I told Brother Dowd, I think that's wrong. There is a process. There's a process that Reagan used, there's a process that Clinton used, there's a process that Bush used. And I think you ought to go through that process.
Right.
And that's why, by the way, John Dowd's a good man, and I think that's why essentially more aggressive attorneys got brought in that are now, you know, I think President Trump's going to war. I think it's very obvious he's going to go to war in this.
Right. Now, let's just talk history for a moment. You're a student of ancient Rome. More Plutarch compared to me, Tacitus. Would you, if you think about it, would you describe Donald Trump as the new American Caesar?
No, not at all. I think he's one of the Gracchi. I've said he's like Tiberius Gracchi. He's a populist. He's anything but a dictator. He's a populist. He's brought more people into this process of governing. He's very prudent. When you talk about a dictator, how could a dictator take 9 months to make the decision he made on Afghanistan? How could a dictator? You guys broke a story.
Do you know why I came up with that analogy?
Why?
Because Donald Trump wanted. This was the moment he wanted and wants a military parade, and the moment for Caesar when he crossed the Rubicon was when he brought the Roman soldiers into the Capitol. That's the analogy.
Wow, you're working that one.
But that's
No, I think he's
it's totally convincing, isn't
I think
it?
I think he wants. Look, he's a patriot. He went
Why
to
does he
France
want a military
because he went to
parade?
France, and I think he was very.
But he didn't serve in Vietnam. Why does
What
he
did
want-
Macron serve in any of the French wars?
I'm not talking about.
No, but I think he was inspired by what he saw on Bastille Day. It's a very inspiring thing where you see all these military units.
What, my parade's bigger than your parade?
No, but I do think it's great for American patriots. It's going to be on Veterans Day. I think it gives the veterans something to parade, and I think it's going to be
Do you
terrific.
think it's appropriate to have tanks rolling past the Capitol?
Well, they're not going to have tanks, but
just be planes.
But by the way, I think it's fine having tanks go past the Capitol. Remember, after we won the Civil War, we had a parade for 2 days. The Grand Army of the Republic came for 2 days through the Capitol. What's wrong with having our military go through the Capitol? We're proud of our veterans. We're proud of our armed services. This is the kind of reaction. This is the kind of reaction that just makes the deplorables angrier and angrier because they think the global elite and the propaganda arm for the global elite, the paper of the Financial Times, it's the way that you go after Trump on something he's trying to do with his basic patriotism.
You're wrong. They think of Harry Truman, who fired Douglas MacArthur. That's what they think.
Well, President Trump, by the way, President Trump, I think, has done a fantastic job in with his generals. I think President Trump he's taken. Look, you guys broke the story on Korea. The very first time that President Trump ever really talked about Korea was in the Financial Times interview you guys did a year ago, right? And look at the movement that he's made on the Korean situation. And I don't totally agree with how everything that's happened there, but he's done a fantastic job. Look in Afghanistan. He's the least trigger-happy, president we've had in a long time. And the opposition media, right, and the entire time in the run-up to this campaign about what a madman he was, how he was unstable, how he was unacceptable to be commander-in-chief. In fact, I think 80% of the Republicans involved in the national security apparatus would sign full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal saying how unacceptable he is. Yet he's been incredibly prudent. The reason is he respects the combatant commanders, he respects General Mattis, he listens to information, and he's not quick on the trigger. And I think it galls me that somebody like Jeff Zucker can walk in here and sit here and say that Fox News is a propaganda channel. I'm not here to defend the Murdochs. They're big boys. They can defend themselves. But you can't name a more propaganda outfit than CNN. Did anybody at CNN, did any editor, any news person, any anchor, anybody get fired for the awful mess they made of the 2016 campaign, which was a disgrace to journalism? No. That is a propaganda outfit. Every night it's hate Trump. And I understand from a business model, you want people, the hate Trump crowd to rally around that. But to come in here and say that another network is propaganda is absolutely, totally absurd. And he's not, and by the way, has anybody in the opposition media questioned him or gone after him about that? No, they cheer him on.
So let's talk about propaganda outlets. Breitbart News, what's gone wrong?
The chief propagandist. Look, it's a very difficult time, I think, in all conservative media, particularly about how you're going to pay for things, right? Obviously, advertising after we won, right? When I left, the traffic was on fire. We had costs under control. All the advertisers there. After we won, you know, all of a sudden people woke up. It had to be the Russians, or it had to be Breitbart, right? It had to be some reason besides you were just rejected by the American people, and so Breitbart became.
But their audience is halved.
The audience is down. I think. Look, I think that's. I think that's the.
Not down. It's halved.
I think that's the difference between just doing aggregation and look. I had a theory. You got to break news and you got to make news, right? That's what people come for. You have to have a sense of urgency. You have to have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And people have to feel that they need this information. The site's a little more aggregation today. I think the guys have a different strategy. The people, that's my team that's there.
They haven't got a political brain like you working it. I mean, real propaganda. I mean, they're doing news maybe.
You know, you say propaganda, right? Today's environment, there's no, the even-handed sources is a thing of myth. The editorial page of the Financial Times is on the front page, right? It's on the front page, just like it is the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And so when you get a small taste of your own medicine,
but Steve,
of your own medicine, right?
And you report without fear and without favor. Did you not read that?
It's the first thing I read every day.
Yeah.
I read the FT
So
first
why
every
would
day.
you want to read propaganda every day?
Because I have to know what the party of Davos thinks. It's know thy enemy. That's why I read propaganda every day.
I'd just like to point out on the record that I haven't been to Davos for 2 years.
Because you understand which way the wind was blowing. The populist nationalists are taking over.
Why did President Trump go to see the gutless globalists in Davos?
I think it was a terrific trip. I think it was a terrific idea. I would have liked the speech to have been a little edgier. I think it was a little too rah-rah. But President Trump, here's what I saw about Davos. They were like 10-year-old kids. They treated him like a rock star. This is the sophistication that you see at Davos. All they are at the end of the day is a collection of groupies. They were running around trying to get selfies with them. It was ridiculous, embarrassing. That is the global technocratic managerial elite that runs our world.
So you got a sort of weird satisfaction from seeing all these billionaires.
Yes.
But in substantial terms, you must have been aching in the gut.
Well, no, I thought it was great that he went. Like I said, I would like the speech to have been a little edgier.
It was a sellout, wasn't it?
It was not a sellout. I think he did a great job. And given that the tax deal had just gotten done, he's talking about American jobs. He's bringing jobs back to the deplorables. The dinner the night before the CEOs, I think, was terrific. So I would have, been a little more like the money changers in the temple, but he decided, I think, to have more of a rah-rah speech, and I think it played very well.
Right. So let's go back to your favorite subject, which is national populism. Yeah. You stood alongside Marine Le Pen of the Front National, and you said, when they call you racist, wear it as a badge of honor. What did you mean by that?
Here's the thing, and this is the great thing about the propaganda media. If you look at that speech, I built up.
That was just a question.
No. No. Because this is the headline CNN had 2 seconds after it. I built up to that.
Well, he did. You did say it.
Hang on, because I talked about what is economic nationalism that Donald Trump went on. Doesn't care about your race, doesn't care about your color, doesn't care about your ethnicity, doesn't care about your gender, doesn't care about your religion, doesn't care about your sexual preference. It cares about one thing, that you're a citizen of the United States of America. Donald Trump, and it's the reason that Clinton did not have the big turnout among working-level blacks or Hispanics, Donald Trump has done more for freedom and anti-racism in this country than anybody. We have the lowest unemployment of blacks in American history, 17-year low in Hispanic unemployment. We have rising wages now in construction, agriculture, where you have a substantial black and Hispanic working class. He really worked to have the repatriation of the $3 trillion to be focused back on capital equipment in those things. Donald Trump has done more for race relations through his economic program than any president. And that's why I told these people, I said, listen, the identity politics, when Hillary Clinton came out the first week I was announced as the campaign CEO, he said racist, you know, white supremacists, and I sat there on the TVs and I told the group right there, I said, if she's going to run on identity politics and we run on economic nationalism, this was August 19th and we're down by 12 points, we are going to beat her. Okay, and we did, and that's the reason. If they call you racist, they have nothing else to argue. They will not, and by the way, CNN never put up the quote about economic nationalism. They never put up the quote about what Donald Trump's done. You know why? They're gutless. They're absolutely gutless, and they will not debate the facts. What they want to do is put the headline down there, Bannon says racist, where's a badge of honor, and get a panel up there of everybody with their head blown up. And that's why they're a propaganda outfit, just like the New York Times.
Now, you're a student of history, not just Italian history, but also French history. And therefore, you will be aware that Marine Le Pen denies that Jews were rounded up in 1940 at the Velodrome and sent east to their deaths in their hundreds.
Was she the runner-up? No, she did say that. Okay, she did that. Was she the runner-up in the French election? Did 40-some% of the people in France vote for her? Was I up there to say those people are perfect? They're not perfect. The deplorables are not perfect. I'm not perfect. I believe in the tenet of the Judeo-Christian West that man has fallen. We're not perfect. No. But those are working-class people in France. And by the way, they represent the second most...
We're not perfect. We're not perfect. But again, as a student of history, doesn't it worry you when a political leader seeks to erase a dark chapter?
Certainly does. Certainly does. It absolutely does.
Yes. And that is...
I didn't sit there and said I supported everything she said. I went there for one reason. I didn't even say I supported Front National. I went there for a reason to tell them they're not alone. That this anti-establishment, populist nationalist movement, as personified in Italy a couple days before, where 2/3 of the people voted anti-establishment, is on the rise. It's on the move, and it's only going to get stronger. It's only going to get more powerful. There's only going to be more anti-establishment. And the reason is the party at Davos is destroying your citizenship, they're debasing your currency, and they're taking your data sovereignty. And as long as they continue to do that, people are going to rise up against it. And you can see it in the polls across Europe, and you can certainly see it in Italy, where they've had 4 governments forced on them from the European Central Bank. And now you've got 2/3 of the people, both left and right.
They've had 54 governments, or 55 since World War II. I mean, in Italy...
That's because of Mussolini. That's because of Mussolini. They don't want a powerful central government.
So if there is this great tide of populism, how come that Macron won in France?
Because he's like Obama. Obama ran as a populist. When Obama, go back and look at how he ran in 2008. Obama ran initially as an anti-war populist. Macron kind of came in as an Obama-like figure.
But Macron staged the greatest military parade that really the president really liked and wants to emulate. Can you imagine Barack Obama holding a military parade?
Well, he's quite different, and he's taken on a lot of things of France. But look, he ran a good race and he beat them. They lost. He beat them soundly. You're not, as I tell people, you're not going to win every fight. You're not going to win every battle. You're not going to win every election. It's the trend. It's how it keeps moving.
Why did you lose in Alabama? I mean,
we lost in Alabama. We lost in Alabama very simply. The Republican establishment are the people that came out with the pedophilia. That was Mitch McConnell and Tim Miller, and that crowd came out because they would rather not be in a majority than have guys like Roy Moore. Roy Moore wasn't my guy. My guy was Mo Brooks, okay? My guy got blown out in the first round.
Right.
But it was very important to keep someone like Luther Strange, who is epitome of the swamp, and support the Christian right, is what we did. And by the way, was Luther Strange with $32 million not beaten by the people in Alabama by 10 points? And Roy Moore would have won if it was not for the pedophilia thing that was put out by Tim Miller and the Republican establishment.
There's no truth in that?
No truth in what?
In the story about...
Well, they'll adjudicate. By the way, they'll have plenty of time to adjudicate. I've looked at the evidence and I think it's totally trumped up. However,
trumped up, probably not the right word.
I think that they'll have plenty of time to adjudicate that. I believe the woman's going forward, and we'll find out.
Let's just step back for a moment. Steve Bannon's career trajectory. You have had an extraordinary here into filmmaking, here in military service, Goldman Sachs, then within a few yards of the Oval Office. And now what next? Have you not got some media venture?
Well, I'm looking at a lot of stuff. I think principally, well, it's a lot of people are talking to me about different media things. There's lots of media companies out there that either need capital, or need to be, or up for sale. So it's not. This is a very difficult time, I think, in news. I think it's a very tough time in media. I think particularly going forward, it shouldn't be lost on us. We're having this big debate about people's data and information. A lot of the companies today depend upon the monetization of their subscribers' data to make a go of it. As we go off these legacy systems, this pays a lot of bills, right? As we go off that system to a more digital system, how you actually pay for that and how you build a community. I think everything's about attention and influence, attention and influence, attention and influence. How you monetize that over time is tough. That's why a lot of people, so I am looking at media properties, but I'm also looking at building a digital grassroots army here in the United States to support the populist nationalist movement and to start to get like a think tank or something to start to weaponize ideas. We need to have more well-defined economic. It shouldn't be lost on anybody. The big thing we fought for about China, all the hawks, we have the $60 billion of tariffs, but most importantly,
it's not enough, is it?
Well, it's not enough, but it's the 301 is very important because that is about forced technology transfers that China demands to take our high technology, okay? But it's ironic that not in the program for the deplorables is this $4.3 trillion budget that's going to have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. And I think it's quite ironic on the day that you put up $60 billion in tariffs to your creditor, because if the Chinese are there, they've got to finance, they're the people we go to the financing or the bulk of the financing of these deficits. And so I think that the permanent political class in Washington, D.C., has to start to rethink this thing through, because we're curdling towards a financial crisis in the next couple of years, as night follows day.
Even with 4% growth?
I think if you do the math, even with 4% growth, I don't think it gets you. I don't think the deficits get down, demonstrably. Yeah, 4% growth, I think you'd actually have higher growth. The growth could be fine, but it doesn't mean you're not still digging yourself. Right. The tax deal was supposed to have concomitant budget cuts over it. Right? Not that the permanent political class would have, $1.3 trillion of additional spending. And by the way, to cut to the heart of it, the $780 billion for the military spending is because we haven't rethought our obligations. We're the underwriter, the guarantor of this liberal post-war rules-based order that everybody loves. The party at Davos loves it. They had Xi there when Trump was giving the American Carnage speech. Xi was there. They were all raving about him, right? And we underwrite it. The deplorables underwrite it with their tax dollars, and the deplorables underwrite it with their kids. Europe doesn't pull their weight. NATO doesn't pull their weight. The Gulf doesn't pull their weight. The guys around the South China Sea don't pull their weight. In the Northwest Pacific, they don't pull their weight. If they want to be allies, they have to start to pull their weight. The United States cannot continue to underwrite the rules-based international order, and that's how you have a $780 billion defense budget, and that's how you end up with trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see.
Now, we're running out of time here, but I wanted to ask you a couple more questions. Just tell us, because you've spent a lot of time with the president, what is the conversation going to be like between President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un?
I don't think it'll happen, so I don't think there will be a conversation. So I just don't think it'll happen. No. I mean, the president
said it was going to happen.
Well, the president may try to make it happen. I just think the logistics of how you do it and where you do it, et cetera, are quite tough, quite difficult. I think the president's done very smartly, put the pressure on China to make sure that they take care of this problem. I know he has said that he wants to meet with the dictator of North Korea. I just am a betting man. I think the over and under of that.
But the reason you're saying that is because you basically said there's nothing to be done. They are going to be nuclear power, and we've lost. And the president was furious about that.
I don't actually think I said that. I said the solution to China, we can denuclearize North Korea. What I said is there's no bloody nose. There's not a military solution. I was very specific. China is the key that picks the lock in North Korea. North Korea is a creation. Its nuclear power, its nuclear program is a creation of China. Okay? They've used that to keep Japan and the United States back on their heel. The solution to Korea goes through Beijing. And I've said that consistently as a China hawk from day one, because it happens to be correct. Now, the reason I don't happen to think, and the president's going to try to work some out, I don't even know where you'd meet. I don't believe a president of the United States would ever travel to the DMZ to meet with.
He could have it in Moscow.
I just don't believe that a dictator of North Korea would ever leave his country.
You meant the dictator of Moscow or the dictator in North Korea?
The dictator in North Korea.
Right.
Was that trying to get the Russian? That was a dig to try to get the Russian thing. That was trying to get the. You guys are obsessed with it. Okay, Russia's economy. I'm no apologist. I was on a destroyer. Its mission was to hunt Soviet submarines. Right. My daughter's a captain in the army. No. Yeah. The big reveal of President Reagan, the reason that they put the plan together to destroy the Soviet Union is when he realized that the Soviet Union's economy was the size of California. Then he realized it's not some giant. The Russia's economy is the size of New York State. It's in a demographic death spiral. It can't create any technology. It lives off natural resources. Are they bad guys? Absolutely. Is it a kleptocracy? Absolutely. But we've got the greatest enemy and the greatest power we've ever had in our history in China. The elites, led by the opposition party media that never questioned them for 25 years, have accelerated and exacerbated their growth. They're now on the path to become a hegemonic power. If you don't believe that, listen to Xi's 19th Party Congress speech and listen to that speech last week. That speech last week was as nationalistic as anything's been going. And now everybody's going, oh my gosh, look at this. This has been 25 years in the making. And the elites in this country, and Peter Schweizer's new book, Secret Empires, talks about Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden, feeding at the trough of Chinese influence operations, and nobody questions it. Do you think we got in this situation with China just because it happened? It didn't happen. The elites in this country exacerbated their growth, okay? And that's why Brexit and 2016 are inextricably linked, and they're linked because of China. The exporting of Chinese deflation and overcapacity helped to gut the Midland heartlands of England, and it gutted the upper Midwest of the United States. If you go out and give this speech to workers in the United States, the Harvard study shows there's a direct correlation between the factories that left, the jobs that left with them, and the opioid crisis. This stuff just didn't happen.
This is an important insight, but I'm going to leave you with one further historical insight, perhaps. You've often been described as an insurgent. I can imagine if you'd been living in an earlier age, you would have been with that group swarming into the White House in 1828 with General Jackson. You'd certainly have been there. But if we go back to Mussolini, in one of his last...
Are you going to make another terrible off-the-mark analogy?
I've been doing my research.
Go ahead.
And
have at it.
I came across the love letter that Mussolini wrote to his longtime lover. And he said...
The mother of his 9 children?
No. There were 8 lovers and 9 children.
Okay.
Right. Let's get that right.
Okay.
He said,
virility.
Goodbye, darling. If I could blow up the world with dynamite, I'd do it. Do you sympathize with that?
Did I say he was a bad guy? Even the Financial Times, you think you just do it once and be fine.
But you quite like to blow up things, don't you?
I think that our institutions have to be questioned and have to be challenged.
But blown up?
Certain of them, yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Positive note, Steve Bannon, thank you very much.
Thank you.